I have another friend who, she and her husband would make fun of his friends who would play basketball with him and say they were praying for him. Well, before they knew it, a friend or a coworker gave her a copy of Left Behind, which she read and started her journey towards Jesus, and he got saved by listening to Dave Ramsey. So you never know what God's going to use and how it's going to go down. So well, friends, welcome to this week's episode of The Boundless Show. This is Lisa Anderson here with you, and we are in the last show of December. Oh my goodness, crazy. Okay, here we are for our roundtable. Another great thing to talk about in an upcoming new year is what it looks like to take our faith into a new year. I'm sure we have people in our lives whom we would love to know Jesus. We would love to be able to tell them about that, but we might feel awkward. We might feel ill-equipped. We might feel just weird about it. So we're going to have a conversation about this today. We have our dear friend, John, producer, here in the studio. Hey, John.
Hey, Lisa.
Producer isn't your last name. I just called you John, producer.
But no, I'm honored to have the title, though.
John Peardon, producer. Georgia's back. Georgia, good to see you.
You too, Lisa.
Sporting in honor of the recent Christmas holiday, a little snowman applique or embroidery.
It's something.
It's great.
Thank you.
It's really fun. And then Chloe, brand new to the table here.
Hello.
So good to have you.
Hi, glad to be here.
Welcome, welcome. Okay, so we want to talk about opportunities to witness, to share your faith, even if you might live in a Christian bubble. And I think a lot of us feel like we do because I feel like I'm giving the same preamble to this as I do to people dating. Okay, it's like if you're going to the same checker in the checkout line, the same time at the gym, the same ladies' small group or men's small group or whatever, and you're expecting different results, it's not going to happen, okay? So kind of the same thing with getting to know people beyond our normal circles. And so it is really weird because I feel like if I look at my average week, I do tend to just talk to the same people, keep up with the same people, do the same things. And of course, I work for Boundless. So here I am at a Christian ministry. And so that's a big chunk of my day, quite frankly. So I want to start out by asking us, let's give a little rundown of our social circles. So what do we do in an average week/weekend? Who do we come in contact with? Are they all just our people? Are they all at church? Or do you make efforts to kind of break out of the mold? What does that look like for you? John, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I'd say I'm about 97% Christian right now among my friend group.
Yeah.
It's not always been
That's because you're an introvert, John, and you spend time with yourself.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
That could be
I don't deny that.
No, that's just teasing you.
What's that Celine Dion song, All by Myself?
Oh, yeah. That's great. That's great. That's a good flashback. Okay. Yes.
Actually, it's mostly Christian, but I do have a couple people right now that I'm really trying to be a good witness to. Actually, some family members in my extended family. Mm-hmm. But I've gone in seasons. There have been times where I was actively meeting with non-Christians, people of different faiths, and at times when I would work in some non-Christian environments. But right now, it's mostly Christian. I have my coworkers who all sign a statement of faith to work at the same place I do, and then my church friends and my small group that I'm very active with.
Yeah, totally understandable. Georgia, how about you?
Yeah, I do think working a Christian nonprofit kind of tends to put you in a Christian bubble, but I am a young life leader for college. And so I think that being a significant part of my week, I'm able to reach out to college students who don't know Jesus on a regular basis. So I think that has kind of shifted for me and has allowed me to go outside of my bubble, especially because in college, most of my friends were not Christian. So I think it's been really like shocking in a good way to have community that all love Jesus. But yeah, I think recently I realized I was like, I'm missing something here because when I was in college, I was able to reach people who didn't know Jesus daily.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I just moved out here, so my bubble is little.
Small anyway.
It's tiny, so it's mostly just the coworkers here. And then I went to a Christian university, And so that was very much so like a little greenhouse and everything. It was small in the middle of nowhere, Ohio. So naturally it's just like isolated anyway. But I did go to public school in like the rest of my life before then. So I still have friends like on social media and stuff that I keep in touch with that are not Christians and not believers, but they always ask me questions, which is really exciting. So
It's interesting you say that, Chloe, because I have that same experience too on social with a lot of friends from all the way back to high school and beyond and other jobs and stuff. So, and they really do. Like I will put something out there and they will respond, or they will text me or message me, DM me with like a question about something, or, you know, just about, sometimes they just ask for prayer because they know I'm a Christian, which is really cool. I would say my other arena where I've really tried to make some inroads is with my neighbors, though they're a really eclectic bunch. So it's very interesting, but it should be really plug and play for me because we have this social committee in our neighborhood that actually plans things that you can go to that are quite fun. And so I try to go to those and just get to know my neighbors. In fact, we have this Christmas, we had our church Christmas concert, and I invited several of my neighbors, all of whom turned me down, including one who I didn't even know, actually not even a neighbor. I just met someone through a different thing and also got the cold shoulder. So I'm still a little bitter about that, but that's okay. I'm okay about it. Anyway, so no, it's okay. But that is an interesting thing because I think there are different personalities almost to sharing your faith. Like some people are going to be super just out there. They're going to be tellers. You know, there are other people who are more inviters. There are other people who are more relational. So I think that's pretty cool. What would you guys say, like in light of that, what's your kind of style when you're able to broach conversations with people or when you're able to be in the same sphere with folks? What does it look like for you to try to have a conversation or make an inroad?
I'm definitely more of the get to know you type. I think the first person I ever led to the Lord, it was actually in college. One of the best experiences of my life was that process, but we had actually been friends for about a year and a half before I just really opened the can of worms and told him, hey, here is firmly where I stand. Where do you stand? And it was just, it was one of those things. He kind of knew a little bit of what I believed, but it took me a while to muster up the courage to say, hey, this is flat out where I stand on certain things. And another person who I've gotten to read the New Testament with, who I'm trying to be a good example for, I had probably known them about 3 years.
Yeah.
So I definitely am the type who I absolutely want to go there. Even when I meet non-Christians, it's one of those thoughts in the back of my head that I'm thinking about the entire time, but usually it takes me a little while.
Yeah, I hear you.
I think being relational is definitely where I land. I would not consider myself, you know, your street evangelist, if you will. I don't feel like that's my strong suit. I feel like getting to know people and not really having an agenda. I feel like sometimes when we talk about it as Christians, it feels very agenda-y. Like they're like I need to check that off. And it's like, I don't know, when I hang out with my Young Life girls, for example, I don't want it to be like okay, well, I need to check mark that, like we talked about God once. Like, I just want to be able to be someone that if they want to talk about what's going on in their life, like I'm just there for them. And it's not something where I have to force it, because I feel like when you force it, then it feels like, you know, feels forced. And so I just want to be open and prepared for what the Lord has. And I think that just starts with being relational and just being a friend.
Yeah. It's funny what you say about street preaching, because I remember my parents, I grew up in California, and my parents each carried gospel tracts and in like 5 different languages. And I remember them just handing them out to people. But to my parents' credit, they would work it from all angles. They weren't just like, you know, drop and dash tract people.
Yeah.
I mean, they were having conversations. My dad, especially, who I truly believe had the gift of evangelism, he could start a conversation with anyone and be like on the gospel in like 30 seconds. It was amazing. But it is funny how I used to be like, not a tract. Oh my goodness, here we go again. But you know what?
God uses for some people.
God uses stuff.
That's
so
great.
Chloe, how about you?
I mean, I agree with you guys. I think it's a lot harder to just go out and say things sometimes, be like, oh, let's talk about Jesus, because it could come across as aggressive. It could come across as pushing an agenda on someone. So I definitely have been in that relational area as well. I just kind of like to meet people where they're at and hear their story. And then if they say something that might, go deeper into the conversation or just a deep subject in general, I might sprinkle something in or ask questions really too. I like to ask questions, which might be annoying, but it's a good way to kind of open up the conversation without it being aggressive.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I found that for me, just being different often will kind of pique people's interest. If I'm not the one, if I'm choosing to do certain things, or they see me drive away on a Sunday, or they see me being involved in something, at church, or just choosing not to do certain activities and whatever. Sometimes I'll get questions. The other times I've gotten questions is when people are going through a really hard time. Like they'll know that both my mom and my dad passed away, and they'll say, Lisa, I would love to talk to you about how you dealt with that or something. And so it really does open opportunities in those ways that are pretty cool. What would you guys say just about straight up meeting new people who don't know the Lord? Because again, it is scary to tread out of our comfort zones, and it's not like everyone's called to just like, Friday night, hit up the bars and let's just go reel people in, drag them into your Bible study or whatever. But what does it look like to do that naturally for you?
I feel like if you're out somewhere, say you're at a coffee shop or something like that, and you see someone who might be looking sad. I mean, that doesn't mean that they're sad, but you could go over and be like, hi, I'd like to maybe if you can, I could buy you a coffee or something like that. Or just if you see someone who looks like they might have a story to tell. Because, everyone has a story to tell. So you could just put yourself out there if you're extroverted. I know, the introverts are not about to go to a coffee shop and be like, I pick you. We're going to talk. But, yeah, I think just being open to talking to strangers, even if you're in line or to a cashier or something, you'd be like, it's a good day. Or how are you doing? Or something like that. But
I think also something that's definitely helped me, and this may sound initially like a Christian cliche thing to do, but it's really not, because I've definitely seen the results of it. Sometimes you need to pray for opportunities. That actually happened with me probably about 2.5, 3 years ago, where I was specifically praying, Lord, I want more opportunities to share my faith. And I was actually approached by some missionaries of another faith at a library one day. And we just struck up a conversation, and that's led to dozens of conversations and some friendships that I wouldn't have had otherwise.
Yeah.
So sometimes if you are just willing to step out and say, God, give me opportunities to share my faith, you'll be amazed at what happens. And just be willing to let opportunities come when you ask for them.
I do think, again, I know I've talked about Young Life this whole time, but I just think this year has been just super awesome seeing the Lord work through Young Life. And I think if you have the opportunity and the margin, or let me take that back. I think everybody has the margin. It's just whether or not you're willing to make margin. And I had the margin, and it does take a good chunk of my week to not only go to club, but to reach out to girls outside of that and do, we call it contact work, where it's you're actually contacting these students and being like, do you want to get coffee, or do you want a meal prep, or whatever it is. But I do think making margin for that has been amazing. Just seeing how I've been able to connect with these girls, and then just being able to interact with them. And sometimes it's nothing major. I've just heard about their week, and they've told me the new lingo that I don't know about. And I'm like, hey, I'm ready and open to hear about that. But then when we do have conversations that lead to Jesus, I'm like, that's the Lord just doing his thing, where he points everything back to himself. So I think making margin is also important. And if that's, doing something like Young Life or Boys and Girls Club or Big Brothers Big Sisters, I think frankly we all have the margin. It's just whether or not you're willing to make that margin, because it does take time. It does take time to create new friendships, especially when you're in a comfortable position.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think also, and this is another thing where you have to find margin, something that you're good at or interested in, and just opening up the net a little wider, like maybe joining something or starting something that others can join. I know I have several friends. Well, I mean, okay, first off, here on the show, how many times have we had Morgan and Dakota on who are talking about pickleball? I'm just like, okay. But they meet so many people doing that, or other sports across the city. Or I was started up by just a random group in the city. I joined a group where it was people of different worldviews that would get together once a month, and we would eat and talk about an issue. And that was a really great way to get to know people. And I know some people do book clubs that are just all over the place, or hiking groups or whatever. And it really is. Sometimes it just takes like being willing to not go to the same old people, but say, I'm going to join something that I see like at my local library and be part of it or whatever. So I think that's a great opportunity to kind of broaden that base a little bit. So what does it look like for you to be winsome, like not too aggressive, but also not like, hi, I've known you 7 years and you don't know I'm a believer yet. So, I mean, kind of that balance between being kind and winsome and real, but also taking an opportunity when you have it.
I think something that's definitely helped me is being willing to share the tough parts of my testimony. The times where God was delivering me from serious depression or lust, or after my mother passed away and I felt so lonely. It's amazing how the walls can come down when you just are willing to share your testimony, as opposed to trying to win a theological argument. I have seen God soften a lot of people's hearts through that. When I'm just saying, hey, here are the times that I was really down and Jesus saved me, or times where I was just so depressed and did not think I could find a way out, and he was faithful to deliver me from it. What's that quote? It's been attributed to a couple different people, that they can argue with your theology or argue with your beliefs, but they can't argue with your story. And it really is true. I mean, be willing to share the vulnerable parts of your story, because it makes you much more relatable to say, hey, this is what Jesus has done for me.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I agree a lot with what John's saying there. I've had times where I was with friends and they asked me how I was doing, and I was at a hard point in my life, and it was a point where I saw like God evidently working in my life, and so I could be like, well, here are these things that are going on that are not great, but there's hope and there's light in that. And again, there are a lot of these things sound very Christian. It's, oh, there's hope, there's light, but it's hard when you're in a dark spot to know that there's hope. And so when someone else is also can connect with you on that level and hear even like the redemption story of the good things that do come out of the bad, then when I can share that as well with those people, then they can they've got to have something in their life where they can relate to it and then attribute it to their life as well. And a conversation can start kind of.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, so last question. What are some stories, some things that you've seen or that you've heard where you're kind of like encouraged or emboldened to realize? I love, one of my favorite verses is Romans 1:16. I'm not ashamed of the gospel. Why? Not because I can deliver it super suavely or with great humor or great force or emphasis or whatever, but because it is literally the power of God for the salvation of everyone who believes, first for the Jew and then for the Gentile. And so coming back to that idea of like, we're just called to testify in a sense, and the Holy Spirit does the work. So where have you seen the Spirit work where you've just been like, what? Okay, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I have a situation right now where I'm praying for a friend of mine, and she's of a different faith than me, and she's super, super nice, but I recently gave her a Bible, and I found out that she was actually reading it and highlighting some stuff. So I'm really hoping that sometime in the coming months I can follow up with her and find out, okay, how's God been using that? So that's actually one that I'm in the middle of right now that I'm praying for. And yeah, it only cost me just a few dollars to give that Bible away, but she said to me, this is one of the nicest things somebody's done for me over the past few months.
That's cool. Awesome.
I really feel like this sounds like I'm just doing an ad for Young Life. I swear they did not pay me to do this. I swear.
Sponsored by Young Life.
Sponsored by Young Life Colorado Springs. No, there was a student in October that nobody was really talking to, and went and talked to her. And that weekend we were doing a college life weekend up in the mountains, and it's like this trip. And I just was talking to her, and I eventually was like, oh, are you coming this weekend? And she was like, I can't pay for it. And we actually were giving away 2 scholarships that day. And one of them went to her. And then that weekend when she came, she had just talked about how she was like, I just haven't talked to God in 7 years. And so this has been like such a great weekend, and felt like I finally found some friends here on campus. And so, yeah, that was just a really good opportunity. Just, that I didn't know all of that was going to happen. And that was like, I think my like 3rd week there. But I think, yeah, just God just opens doors and makes it all work. And I think seeing her that weekend just interact and make new friends was just really awesome, because I was like, that was nothing that we could have done. But I think just having our place to foster friendships and relationships that point back to Christ is just really important, especially for students who, maybe haven't talked to Jesus in 7 years, and it's the first time that they're going back and asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So one thing that I've seen God use in my life recently is I wrote a song based off of Romans 7, where it's, I do not do the things that I want to do. I do the thing that's living in this. What? How does it go? I do not do the things that I want to do. It's the sin that's living inside of me. So I wrote a song about that, and I'd posted it on my social media. And one of these girls that I hadn't talked to since my sophomore year of high school, we had like a really big falling out, and it was a pretty hard friendship. But she had seen my song, and she reached back out to me, and she was like, this is really meaningful. And I think that even I'm not a Christian, but as that, I can still understand the perspective that you're singing in this song, because I do things that I don't want to do all the time. And so I was able to have like a conversation with her just like through Instagram DMs, and just she asked me a bunch of questions, and she was like, you know what, I think I want to learn a little bit more and kind of see where this might lead me, because maybe, as your song says, like there's hope, and I can be washed clean despite doing things that I don't want to. So it's really cool that you can use like art to reach non-believers as well, even online. I know it's not like in person or anything, but
no, that's awesome. What a neat story. That's great. It is funny, because I'm thinking now, for those of you who are listening who maybe don't know Jesus, it's, maybe you're like, I just wanted to listen to this show for some dating advice or for a sense of community or whatever. The good news is that, first off, if Jesus is going to get you, he's going to get you. You can't even do anything about it. So we're not going to sit here and try to strong arm you or be all weird or get up in your business or whatever. We're just saying what we know and what we believe. And so, but I sure hope that you're going to open your heart, and that you're open at least to a conversation around these things. For my part, I have a dear friend who, her first week at a secular college, I'll give InterVarsity a shout out here, Georgia, to balance it out.
A little bit.
A group came to her door and invited her to a Bible study, and she went, and she became a Christian, and so started on her road. And she's like, Lisa, honestly, it could have been a group of partiers and I would have gone out with them, but the Bible study got to me first. And so just a really cool story. I have another friend who, she and her husband would make fun of his friends who would play basketball with him and say they were praying for him. Well, before they knew it, a friend or a coworker gave her a copy of Left Behind, which she read and started her journey towards Jesus, and he got saved by listening to Dave Ramsey. So you never know what God's going to use and how it's going to go down. So I just hope that it does for you if you're listening. So you guys, thanks so much for weighing in on this. What great stories, and I hope we're all encouraged.
Thank you, Lisa.